Welcome to the Project Mom Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Gorey, mom of a sweet baby girl and an ever-evolving entrepreneur. On this show, we will explore the intersection of motherhood and entrepreneurship. We will share stories of moms just like you and me with the goal of fostering community and comfort in knowing that we are not alone in our experiences. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to ensure you get all the updated episodes and releases. Welcome to today's episode of the Project Mom Podcast. Today, I'm chatting with Nguyen, who is a mom and wife to a sweet 2-year-old daughter and is Chinese-American lifestyle and motherhood content creator from San Diego, California. She shares her content on her Instagram and YouTube channel, Happily Ever Nancy, and on her podcast, Hey Mama Memos. So Nancy, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Emily, for having me. I feel so honored to be on your podcast today.
Yay! Well, thank you. And I am honored for you to be here. We definitely connected over our, desires to tell mama stories and all of that good stuff and wanting to get kind of all of the behind the scenes out there. So I am hopeful and excited for today. And I think with that, let's just dive in. I think there's going to be so many great nuggets of information that are going to come out of this that we just don't even know yet. So I think we should just hit the ground running.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah. With that, let's start with your entrepreneurial journey. So can you walk us through the timeline and what this looked like from working and moving into full-time content creation? How did that play out for you?
Yeah, let me think back because now it feels like ages ago. Like I have to tap back into a different version of myself. For me, I went to San Diego State University and got a marketing degree. And so during that time, this was around like 2012 when like social media was still really new and blooming. Like Instagram wasn't a thing yet, but YouTube was. And so when I created my YouTube channel back in 2010, it was just a hobby. I thought it was super cool that people were creating content like that's never been heard of before. Like, what is this concept of having a YouTube channel? And so from there, I learned a lot about social media or the beginning stages of it. And so from that inspiration, I realized, oh, maybe I should switch my major to marketing because I was an accounting major before. That did not work out for me because I'm terrible at math and I thought it'd be the safe path to take. And that's just kind of what my parents told me to do. And even subconsciously, and I realized that is not the major for me. And so that started me off on my marketing journey as a major and doing different internships with like SEO and social media. And so my first job out of college was a social media specialist, helping to manage other people's social media channels, mostly like Facebook and Instagram at the time. And so I kind of stayed in that field a lot moving forward for like the next 3 years. But one thing I did really love during college was hospitality. I didn't end up majoring it, but I love travel and hotels. And so when I found a job that allowed me to be a part of the marketing team but for a hotel, I thought, I'm like, wow, this is like the greatest combination ever. And so that was my last 9-to-5 corporate job that I had, was being a social media specialist for a local hotel in San Diego. And I loved that job because it allowed me to be creative. I took the skills that I ended up learning from YouTube and having my own Instagram and just doing it for other people too. And it was so cool because in that stage when I was a social media specialist, we were just getting used to working with influencers, like content creation, how to outsource that. Like that concept was so new because I was creating everything in-house. And so once we started seeing guests share their photos online, we're like, how can we repurpose that? How can we share it and tell their story? And we're like, this is so crazy. So I got to see it from a brand's perspective, but then also as a creator, because I was kind of doing the same thing on my own on Happily Ever Nancy. So that's what I was doing all the way up until like 2018. And towards the end of 2018 is when I decided to quit that job and dive into content creation, because at that time I was just experiencing this transition stage where I'm like, it started to feel a little toxic. I was questioning, wondering like, well, what's my next move? Like, where do I want to go in my career? Like, am I happy here? And at that time, I just realized I really loved creating content on my own personal platforms, being able to connect with others. And even then, during that time, I didn't realize a lot of people made a career out of that, working for themselves. And so at that time, I decided to just take a leap. I talked to my husband about it. We like try to figure out our own timelines of him transitioning from going to school to teaching. That's what he was doing. And then me leaving my job. So there was a lot of back and forth going at that time. But we realized that for me, for my own mental health and state, I needed to leave my job just to take some time to recuperate and just process everything. And so ever since that moment, I never found myself going back to corporate yet because I just spent that time afterwards really working on my own personal development. And then I ended up getting pregnant. And I really jump fast forward to like 2019. And I really think that period of when before I became pregnant, I'm happy I spent some time kind of decompressing because I was so stressed out. I saw the stress that manifested physically in my body, mentally, physically, emotionally, like everything about it. And when I finally ended up getting pregnant, like it was the biggest blessing ever because I realized how much I had worked on myself to just kind of relieve some of that stress. I finally found a little bit of inner peace that I didn't feel prior. And it just gave me a newfound sense of purpose. And that leads me to my motherhood journey. I became a mom, first time mom 2020 to my baby girl, Noelle. So here I am now.
Yeah. It's really quite remarkable when you think about like the progression of where we are as humans in different parts of our lives, right? It's like, or different stages, right? It's when you had made that transition to social media strategy and specialist for hotels, right? You were pivoting into an arena that really gave you joy and that was aligned with things that interested you. And then you start to recognize that as you're evolving as a human and you're taking on all of these responsibilities and you're seeing the world change around you with, where content is being created and where things can be repurposed and things like that, there's really something to be said for like reevaluating and just seeing where you are meant to be in this moment may not be where you wanted to be last year or 2 years or 3 years prior. So I really honor you for that. And there's a lot of value to be brought to the table for that.
Well, thank you. It's scary doing that because you have to be really honest with yourself. And sometimes, even when you ask yourself those questions, you might not even know the answer yet. And so it'll come in due time, but you just start, chipping away at it. And it's really scary, but it's also really relieving once you arrive to an answer and you find peace with it.
Yeah, for sure. I love that you share the value that time to decompress brought you because I had a very similar experience. I quit my corporate job in 2018 and took a little bit of time. And then I tried to start a consulting business doing what I was doing corporate, but for small businesses in the area. And it just felt harder than it needed to be. So I ultimately put that on pause to decompress and take a look at where these stressors were coming from and what pressures were I putting on myself, and actually was able to do a very similar process of reflection prior to becoming pregnant as well. And there's so much value in that. And it feels a little less overwhelming, but still just as hard. Just as hard.
It's in its own way.
Oh, so hard. Okay, so let's jump into, so Noelle was born in 2020 and you were full-time content creation for your YouTube and your Instagram page, right? They're kind of working simultaneously together. What did that look like for you once she was born? How did content creation fit into your day? And how'd you balance those?
Yeah. And so for the type of content I've shared, it's always been very lifestyle driven. Like when I started my channel, it was sharing what was I doing in college. And that was the inspiration. It kind of followed me through. And so when I was pregnant, it was just like a natural progression of sharing my motherhood journey, my pregnancy journey. So that was a lot of the content that I ended up sharing on my channel, like registry tips, my birth story. I shared all that on YouTube. And through that, like I was able to connect with so many moms by sharing my labor story, my birth story. And it just kind of took it to a whole new level of just being so open and honest with this journey and having others feel comforted and being able to relate. Because I found like when I gave birth, it was almost like a rebirth of myself. I know people say that all the time, but it became this moment where I'm like, wow, I trusted myself so much in that moment. And we had such a beautiful birth experience. It just made me feel inspired to continue sharing more of our motherhood journey. And so when she was born, I continued just to share monthly updates, like what we're doing, from what my daughter is wearing and eating to my own personal, journey of like the struggles that we're hitting and also the milestones. And I kind of kept up with that till now, sharing more of my point of view. Now that she's a little bit older, it's been a little bit harder of a pivot because before it was so like, oh, what are they doing in the newborn stage, 6 month updates, things like that. But now she's so active as a toddler, I don't have as much time to. I was actually feeling more productive when she was a newborn because she literally would just sleep. And I felt so productive editing and filming a video more than I ever did before. So now it's a little bit harder to find that time. But I'm mostly really sharing my own personal journey and experience and just connecting with mama is in the DMs, sharing about our stories. And if they have like postpartum anxiety, we would talk about it. And I feel so honored that someone would trust me. I'm a complete stranger when you really think about it to have someone open up themselves to me and we can connect and hold space for each other.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's beautiful. I think, right, that's also where this podcast lent itself from, of just being able to be open and honest about experiences that we've had in hopes that somebody finds some comfort in knowing that they're not the only ones having experienced that. So from your time over the last 2 years or so with, sharing the journey of your pregnancy into the birth of your daughter, has there been anything that was surprising to you that perhaps you thought would have been helpful to know ahead of time, or that has there been something that you shared that really resonated well with your community that helped other women that perhaps surprised you or just gives you some sort of warm and fuzzy happiness feeling with?
Yeah. One of the biggest surprises wasn't actually too much about being a mom, like taking care of my baby. It was really the inner journey that I didn't expect to go on. And by being a mom, it kind of brought up a lot of things and stories, mostly like childhood experiences of my own, because when I'm interacting with my daughter, I would see a lot of old stories that I used to experience come up for me that maybe I didn't process when I was little, but now it's coming back to me as an adult. And so that has been happening a lot. I did not expect that to happen, but it just kind of surfaces. And now I'm like, okay, what do I do with all this information? Why am I feeling this way? It's not even any overwhelm of taking care of my daughter. It's like, wow, the way it made me feel like I'm seeing myself in her shoes. And it's such an interesting contrast. And for us, we live together with my parents. And so I'm an only child too. So we have this like multiple generation under one household. And that's kind of how I grew up too, living with my grandparents. And so this is pretty much the norm. But like after becoming a mom and having all of us under one household, I've come to realize like, wow, how different it is with different parenting styles living with my mom and my dad, even though they give us a lot of freedom and privacy as well. But it's hard when you're all under the same household. Like the energies, everyone is just here. And it took me a lot to process that. How do I show up as a daughter with my parents, a wife, and then also a new mom, and also parenting in a completely different way than they parented me? And so that has been one of the hardest things.
I want to just ask you, has there been a situation where, having lived with your parents, right, how they parent and perhaps quite differently than you're choosing to now? Has there been a situation where you actually had to address a difference in parenting style with your parents yet?
I have. Seeing my parents, I always think oh, maybe they know everything because they're my parents. You kind of put them on that pedestal thinking they know everything. And then when I would see them, they're great grandparents, by the way, but then you would just pick up on certain things now that you are a mom. Oh, maybe the way they said that or the way they approach this isn't how I would do it. And so I would kind of view it and see how it goes. And then I would talk to my parents if it really bothered me that much. And usually it does because I just get this feeling that comes over me. I'm like, wait, something feels off. And I think by leading by example, my parents would see wow, I'm parenting differently. And sometimes your parents might not be so aware. And mine aren't. We've definitely had some hard times talking about stuff because it might not be as obvious to them. And so I would have to bring it up. And even bringing it up is very hard to do. And we still have that parent child dynamic, obviously, even though I'm like in my 30s now. But how do you bring that type of information up? And so we've been slowly working through it. And I'm so proud of us because it is really hard. And the thing I've come to understand is that I can only control how I react and what I do. It's really hard to expect them to react a certain way or maybe change their behavior and their habits completely when they're like, 70 years old. Like it's so crazy to think. And it's been a lot to process in that front.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it's obviously also a blessing, right? To have them be so close by and to be a part of your daughter's life and her like immediate support system. And there's really nothing quite like that. And there's also a part of me that always reminds myself, we don't live near my parents. We live near my husband's parents. And there's a part of me that always just tries to remind myself that this help is wonderful. I'm receiving this help, even if it's isn't exactly how I would do it. These are wonderful human beings who are adding extra love into my daughter's life, right? It's like extra people to love her. So there's always a way to kind of reframe it. But, I do also value you sharing the, steps that you take to perhaps address something that's not quite pass overable in that regard. And, alongside accepting our parents are who our parents are. And that is one of the blessings of being an adult as well, is we see our parents as humans.
Oh, that was the biggest realization ever, just to well, you're also a human being? What?
Yeah. I'm sorry. You have faults?
I know,
No,
right?
you're not allowed. Yeah, we could probably go down that rabbit hole a little bit, but let's circle back. So I would love to share a little bit maybe around boundaries. So in terms of setting time for your content creation, being such a hands-on active mom and caregiver, and also being in a home with your parents also there and your husband as well. What do some boundaries look like for you? What are some kind of non-negotiables for you in order to prioritize yourself among also this need of giving to all of these other people?
Yeah. So for me, I'm a recovering people pleaser. I never set boundaries before. And so this concept is so important and it's something so new that I'm working on because I would take things on and I would have no problem with it. Like, yeah, I'll be there for you. I'll do this and that until it really piles up. And it happens so many times where I'm like, wait a minute, I need to take a step back. Why am I doing this? Or why am I feeling this way and not like, at the optimal like energy levels that I want to be. And so that's when I started realizing like environment is everything, tapping into like, well, am I not doing anything for myself that's not filling my own personal cup? That's why I feel depleted. Like, what's going on? I started asking myself all these questions. And so I don't have like the craziest like schedule because I am a very hands-on mom and I love it. I absolutely love it. But I've come to realize even for me, when I take like an hour at the coffee shop, that makes me so happy. And that's something I used to do all the time before I had my baby. But going there, even for an hour, sitting by myself, journaling, reading a book, whatever, like just being there made me feel so free. And it literally filled my cup being at a coffee shop and like getting a drink and just that whole just being, and it just made me feel so re-energized. And so I would try to do that at least once a week or at least have that intention and know that I'm like, okay, I deserve that time and I'm going to work towards that time. And so I'm trying to talk to my husband and figuring out our schedules, like when I can schedule that in. And sometimes, like for a long time, like I couldn't go out by myself because we were like, pandemic life, we weren't really going out either. So you have that playing in. And also, my nerves as being a first time mom, how do I bring my baby outside? Like all those thoughts crept into my head. But as we slowly started getting more comfortable, like when I would crave going to a coffee shop or just going out, I would bring my daughter along. And it's actually become really fun. We go on these mommy and daughter dates. And I know it can be very crazy going out with our babies and toddlers, but being out there and experiencing it with her, it gave me joy as well if I can't go out by myself. And so I didn't let that stop me. And I'm like, okay, let's just bring my daughter along. Let's create new memories together. And that little mindset shift just helped me so much in setting those mini boundaries with myself and just mom life.
I love that. I think there is honestly something a little overwhelming about taking your daughter with you. Some of these places, my daughter is a full-on toddler girl, needs to have anything that I have and runs around and doesn't listen. So there is something to be said for just finding the energy to like start making those new memories because time flies, right? Things happen, days go by really quickly, and sometimes we lose sight of that. So I really honor you for that energy and doing that because it makes you happy and fills you up. So let's dive into first time mom pandemic life because you mentioned it a little bit, right? It's like we couldn't go anywhere. We are moms who have the first time experience of taking care of another human life and have quite possibly lost all outside connection in some capacity, right? When we're in lockdown, there's so many fears coming up. So what did those first few months look like for you when your daughter was born and we're like in like the dead heat of lockdown?
Yeah, for us, my daughter was born. She came a week early in March. And so she actually came right before we locked down. Like it locked down like right after. And so prior to that, like leading up into labor and all that stuff, that wasn't even on my mind. I obviously know I knew a pandemic was happening. That never crossed my mind to even prepare for what life would be like postpartum. And so after I gave birth, week after, the world shut down. And so during that time, I knew I was recovering at home anyways, but I didn't realize how intense and everything the pandemic would be. The concept of it. I don't think any one of us knew how intense it would be. And so I'm so grateful we lived together with my parents, so I was able to see them. So it wasn't just like me feeling isolated by myself. And I know that's really hard for a lot of people because you might not have family on hand with you, especially during that time under those circumstances. And so for me, I just really took that time to just recover, be at home. And those first few weeks were fine. I don't think I understood the concept of like, we literally cannot go outside. Like, we walked around our neighborhood, but just like, I didn't even have energy to like go to a coffee shop or go run errands, things like that. So it never crossed my mind. But it wasn't until later when she was older, like around 6 months, that's probably when we were like really in the middle of it. We're like, wow, we haven't seen our friends. Like our friends who are so excited that we have this new baby, they can't come meet her. Like by the time they do see her, it's like they saw her after I gave birth. I was surprised I was able to actually have people come visit me at the hospital. And then they didn't see her until she was 1. And so trying to process that, I was just like, wait a minute, what happened? Like time really did fly by. Like what happened during those months where, you know, for a while my friends and I, we tried to stay in touch so much. Like we would play games online on Zoom. Like there were all these like online games trying to keep people together. And I was so grateful for that time. And then afterwards, like no one really talked to each other anymore. It wasn't as like a priority. I don't know, like it kind of died down a little bit. And so it started feeling a little bit lonely because I would miss my friends. Like you want to make all these new memories together, especially when they're a newborn stage. And it just made me sad when I thought back to it because in the moment you're trying to heal, you're trying to learn how to be a mom for the first time, learning all these new things on top of pandemic life being on lockdown. And so I don't think I realized how lonely it felt at times until later, like right now, reflecting. Yeah, when we started venturing out into the world again.
Yeah, it is really quite jarring when you think about the time progression, right? It's like that story you just shared of they met your daughter right after she was born and then didn't see her again in person until she was almost a year or a year old. And I think about that in terms of my experience as well. My sister has a daughter who's 1 month younger than mine. We had our daughters at the same time. I did not see my sister at all during our pregnancies. We both got pregnant during the pandemic, so post lockdown. So I did not see my sister at all while we were pregnant. And then she had her baby and I had my baby, and they did not meet until they were 6 and 5 months old. And granted, we don't live near each other. We're a plane ride away. So that also adds a little bit of a variable to it. But also, these are things that you're not expecting to experience as you're going through what should be like the most beautiful time, right? So it's another one of these things, at least for me, that kind of played out a little bit different than expectations that I had had for this whole journey. So I really resonate that part of your story as well. Was there any fear around like reintegrating back into the world as the world started to open up a little bit with her in this pandemic that we were in?
Even going to the park, it took us a long time to go even out to the neighborhood park. And just like, it kind of blew my mind how careful we were. And so, but I missed people too. I missed, the energy of saying hi to someone and just hanging out. And so, like, little at a time, we started feeling a little bit more comfortable. I think the biggest trip we took was probably to Disneyland right when they reopened. We're huge Disney fans. And that was like, I was just like, okay, I want to experience Disneyland with her, but I'm like, okay, but there's a lot of people around too. What do we do?
Yeah.
Just
How do
like
we keep
everywhere
ourselves
else.
safe?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
how do we keep ourselves safe, but also enjoy and live life and not live in fear while being, as careful as we possibly can. And so it was just a lot. Like, that's why I never really even took her out too much. And that's part of the mom guilt where I'm like, am I not showing her more experiences outside of our home? Am I not doing enough? But then, like, we are in a pandemic, like, it's not safe to go out. Like, all these thoughts popped into my head. And it was just hard to navigate because the guilt would set in, the fear of going out. And it's almost like, oh my gosh, what happens if you do catch it? Like, did I not do it everything correctly? Like, there's all these extra thoughts that pop into your head. I feel like, since, especially because I'm a first time mom too, like those natural fears build upon each other. Um, oh my gosh, I totally forgot the question.
That's it. That's absolute, Nancy, you're
Yeah.
totally hitting it. It's what fears did you have? I mean, there's so many, unfortunately, as right first time moms, we're like, our minds run rampant. Like, it's like we're constantly like moving all over the place. Am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? If I do this, what are the consequences of doing that? And it's, yeah, a very real conversation that I think especially first time moms had to have with themselves in the middle of a pandemic of figuring out what is the risk versus the reward in this situation. Is the experience that we're going to have, the memories we're going to make, the exposure to other human beings worth the risk of possibly contracting this virus? And what does that look for us? It's a very real conversation, and there's no real answer to it either, right? It's like individual and what works for each and every one of us. And there's so much guilt. Am I doing this right? Is she going to remember that I like kept her in the house for 6 whole months and didn't let her crawl on the sidewalk, even though she screamed to let me? Probably not, but I'm going to remember.
Yeah, because one of my best friends, she had a baby recently, about like a month and a half ago. And then like we would see her, she would go out, and I was just wondering, like, why didn't I take Noelle out to go eat here? Like, why didn't I do any of this? And then I remembered it was closed, things were locked down, and I was like, oh, okay. It brought me right back. Because right now we're just such in the middle of toddlerhood that I totally forgot, like, what were we even doing during the newborn stage? So the contrast within just 2.5 years has been so different.
Yeah, it really is quite remarkable, the experience that you have. And again, right, we have nothing to compare to. We will never be first time moms again, right? We've already done that. So like to be able to compare that now to your friend who has this, new baby and is out and about and doing all of these things. Like I say now, like, oh, I never would do that. But I'm like, maybe I would have done that. Maybe I would have wanted to go out and do things. And you just never really know. But it is quite remarkable just to see how life plays itself out. I feel like my experience with this pandemic was good and bad, right? There was personally for me, I had a tougher recovery after my daughter's birth physically than I had anticipated. So it was actually good for me to stay close to home and not go out and actually give myself this chance to rest. But I also wonder, the part of me also wonders, would I have not suffered from some level of postpartum depression, anxiety that I did if I had the opportunities to go out and connect with other moms or, go in and see other women who have similar experiences than me or just, connect with other people. So it's an interesting concept to think about it that way.
For sure. It's like we look back and we made the decisions that we made at that time, and we could reflect back and there could be so many different possible scenarios. But we did at that moment.
Yeah. It's crazy. All right. Let's talk a little bit about your content creation work still. So you now have your daughter. She is your pride and joy. You love sharing these moments with her. And how did you navigate those first couple of months? I know you had shared a little bit, the creation of the content was fairly seamless and that you just continue to share kind of these life experiences and the journey that you were on. So the content itself was fairly seamless, it sounds like. But how do you justify, or how did you navigate the like desire to like want to continue to create? And did you ever feel any like that you weren't getting enough time to work on your business, or you're, feeling like your mind was elsewhere, but you were always with your daughter? Like, did you feel any of that pull?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I think back to just the newborn stage, that part, it felt a little bit more seamless because I was able to edit and record. And so that transition wasn't too difficult. But then once she started becoming more active and it just demanded a different type of energy from me that was different from the newborn stage. Because once you get used to a stage, it changes all over again. I have to learn new things, preparing for the next phase. And that's just how motherhood has been. And it's super exciting, but then it also made me reevaluate like, okay, where am I right now? And so as she's gotten older, I found myself having a harder time to sit down and film a video. And that usually makes me feel, because filming videos makes me feel super creative and I feel really inspired. But then when I would ever take out my camera just to record, but a little bit, or especially we do daily vlogs, like, you're recording your day-to-day life, like moments here and there, she would just want to grab the camera and like get really fussy. And I didn't want that to, make her feel like frustrated, like every time I whipped out a camera to record and do work. And so I had to find a balance between like, okay, like right now we're just hanging out and I'll, do work later. But then it's also hard when the type of work I'm doing is creating lifestyle content and it's sharing part of our life. So where do I find that boundary and that fine line? And so for a while, I kind of took a mini break actually from recording videos because I found it to be so difficult and it made me feel uninspired to do it. And in that moment, I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm so behind. I'm not creating any content anymore. I don't feel inspired. So I went through a lull when I'm like, I hit a creative rut. I don't even know what to share anymore. And I don't even know what to do anymore. And so it was around her first birthday. And I had the idea of creating a podcast because I love listening to podcasts. Even before I became a mom, like on my drive to work, like I would listen to it all the time. And so I was just thinking like, oh, how awesome it would be to make a podcast and just chat about motherhood. And it made me feel so excited because now I don't have to, be camera ready, but I could still share a message and connect with others. And I'm like, this is a really cool way to do it. Like maybe I should try it and, share messages and inspire moms who are feeling the same way so they can feel less alone. That you could listen to it when your baby is napping or when you're cleaning, doing errands or whatever. It just felt like less of a resistance creating on that new platform. And so I had the idea for it when she turned 1, and then I didn't really execute it on it until a year later because it was just looming in my head. But it made me excited again because I noticed there was this barrier, this resistance of filming videos, but I still wanted to create. And so I pivoted a little bit and introduced a podcast, and that kind of re-sparked my interest for creating content. And then that's something I would recommend to everyone who feels like you're experiencing some resistance. Like maybe there's a different way for you to share your creativity or what you want to do. Because I sat in that lull for so long, like I don't even know what to do anymore. And then it just reignited me because it gave me a way to, share my message and create again.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's absolutely something to be said for pivoting, just reevaluating, seeing where life takes us. And sometimes it's something we least expect, but it's something so beautiful and it's where we're meant to be. And I love that you started the podcast and can start to share your messaging that way. And there's so many different ways that people consume media. So perhaps the people that you weren't reaching through the YouTube channel can, find you on this platform and still get to hear the value that you have to offer. So being able to pivot and see what works in your lifestyle right now is so important. So I appreciate that message and just hope that somebody who's listening can find a little bit of support and that's okay. And I want to touch a little bit on this kind of financial aspect of having a business, right? Something that we're putting our heart and our souls into. And something that we had talked a little bit about kind of as we were discovering what we could chat about on this call was this kind of guilt or push-pull of needing to kind of provide or support financially, especially as, women who grew up in an age where career was important, right? It was part of our identities that we were taught. And how do we then rectify this slowdown period or being a stay-at-home mom and creating content and sharing our messaging, but not always necessarily seeing a one-to-one financial reward and as a participation that way in our, family unit. So can you just share a little bit with those listening, kind of your experiences with that and kind of what those thoughts were for you?
Yeah. Oh my, this is such a great question. Such a intense and very important topic to talk about. So for this, like when I became a stay-at-home mom, I didn't realize like this pull I would have like, okay, I'm trying to maintain this old identity that I had of like, okay, I need to be the breadwinner. I need to do this and this and earn this type of income for me to feel worthy. And so I felt like I needed all these things to be a good mom if you were just to measure it financially. And I was trying to think like where am I coming up with all these random things to measure my worth when like that is not even important. We are already worthy as we are regardless of, what job you have, just you being you. That is already more than enough. And it took me a long time to realize that part because I relied so heavily on like, okay, I want a stable career, like hence why I chose accounting, but then I pivoted and then all of a sudden quitting my 9 to 5, I'm going creative route. Like that is totally not even a stable thing in terms of like what, people see it as a career, but people are doing it. And so I think I was trying to measure myself and my worth with these metrics that are not even applicable to me being a mom. But the whole time I kept trying to force it upon myself, like seeing like, oh, am I doing a good job as a mom? But am I bringing in income too? Because that will really determine whether I'm a good mom or not, which sounds insane to me. And it took me a really long time, almost recently, to realize like, no, I'm an awesome mom. I'm so proud of myself for, becoming a mom, figuring it out and being there for my daughter, breaking generational trauma, like all these things. And I've come to realize I'm like, wow, I'm already worthy as a mom without the financial part of it. But of course, I think it's also okay to have those dreams and those goals of providing financial abundance for your family as well. So how do you balance that without the guilt? And so I have been working on learning about self-worth without the financial ties, but also allowing myself to have those dreams, but not have it dictate each other. Because I used to. That's why I would feel that pull. Like whenever I can't create content, I would just feel super frustrated, or the fact that I'm not earning the same income I was when I was working 9 to 5, it makes me feel less than. And one of the biggest things that helped me was when I shared that fear with my husband because he works at a corporate job. So, it sounds very normal. Even me telling him that, like, hey, I feel like I'm not as worthy as you, or I don't have as much of a say because I'm not in a normal job. Even just normal going out and about shopping, buying groceries, like, it made me feel weird. And I didn't realize I did feel weird about it until those moments. And it's not like he was making me feel weird about it. Like we have very open communication. Like, this is our household income. Like it's fine. And it didn't cross his mind that way, but it was affecting me internally. And I didn't realize it for the longest time. That little fear without me sharing that with him was holding myself back because I was just putting my worth on that. And he's like, what are you even saying? Like, that's not true at all, And I'm like, oh, what else? There's so much.
I mean, it's so much pressure, right? That we put on ourselves to like fulfill all of these expectations of ourselves that are crafted by the expectations of others and businesses and general societies that are like way outdated and traditional in a world that doesn't need to continue. And I think it's important. And I want to just kind of touch on this a little bit too, because I think like the thought of just giving ourselves permission to be vulnerable like that with our partners or our support teams or whatever it is while the fear that we have or these limiting beliefs that we have feel so overwhelming, when you actually put light on them and you share them with somebody else, it helps put them into perspective a little bit, right? It's like some of those walls can get broken down a bit, and it's just invaluable to have a partner who can maybe reflect back on you and say, Nancy, you are worthy. You are doing a wonderful job. Do not overthink this financial piece of it. If you have that goal, let's find a way to make that happen. And it really is super valuable to find a support team in order to do that, because it's not fun, nor should you have to go at it alone. So it's such a great takeaway from that. And it's interesting because there's also this piece of guilt for me around, do I make enough from this hobby to justify the time I'm spending on it away from my daughter? Which is an interesting one, right? It's like my husband always says to me, he's like, do you want to do it? Go do it. He also works for himself. He doesn't work for a corporation or anything. So he had to take some time at the beginning of that journey to put in the effort, as similar to, I'm sure, the journey that you had with your content creation of, you're generating, you're honing your skills, you're figuring out your message, and you're putting it out there. And in time, right, it will ultimately become something that you can monetize and build into a financial business. So can you share a little bit about kind of what your timeline looked like in terms of kind of trusting the process of, I'm going to create this content because this is a message that fulfills me and I see the value, and I'm going to take some of that pressure off of needing to monetize it and, figure out a way to financially bring something in?
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Thank you for asking me that question, because it has been a question I've been trying to ask myself all the time. And it's something I'm
You're
still
welcome.
honestly working through, because I feel like at each stage of my content creation journey, I've always hit that roadblock where it's like, before it was for fun, pure joy, creating like no one's watching, and I didn't let anyone affect me. And then once I realized, oh, it could become a job, like this is when I was still in college, I would have this wave of anxiety that I didn't realize, of trying to be like, oh, do I need to be like this person? Do I need to try to create content like this? Like
The
what
comparison.
yeah, the
Mm-hmm.
comparison is just insane. And then you start questioning yourself, like, what is my message? What am I even trying to share? Why am I here? And you just start doubting your own content. And I went through so many waves, and I'm still coming out of a wave and fighting my way through all of that and what my own voice is. Because, once I told myself, like, I feel like there is this amount of guilt where it's like, yes, it's my hobby and I love it and your passion, and you feel guilty for wanting to monetize it. There's that weird bridge, like that narrative I've had to work through as well, because you don't want to feel like you're a sellout. And that was a weird old story I was telling myself for the longest time, and that I'm trying to rewrite, because that's why I would get nervous taking on a brand deal. Like, as a content creator, you work with brands and you help create content. And I would be very careful, obviously, when I collaborate with brands, I want to make sure we're aligned. It feels like a natural choice that we would be working together. But even if we do work together really well, I would still have this underlying fear, like, oh my gosh, am I a sellout right now? Should I even be monetizing this? Because, like, this is not a quote unquote normal job or whatever. And that was just the narrative I was writing in my own head, like that story, and I was believing it. And so that's something I've been working through. If you're also a creator and you feel that too, know that we can definitely rewrite our stories. And because when I say it out loud, it just kind of sounds ridiculous, like, why? But it's also learning to trust yourself during those times when maybe you're not seeing financial abundance yet, but you're putting in the work. How do you trust the process when you're in that stage of it too, of the creator process? That part, you have to like really tap back into your why. As cheesy as that sounds, and I've read so many personal development books and listened to so many podcasts, people always talk about that. And they always say like financial abundance will follow when you're doing your thing, you're telling your story without that limitation. It's going to happen for you, because when I realized, when I was thinking about the monetary aspect of it, but obviously coming from a good place, because I'm like, oh, I want to provide for my family. It should be coming from a good place. But then I realized I've been telling it to myself from like a scarcity mindset. And so you could feel the different type of energy, how you tell yourself these stories. And so I was like, wow, I didn't want to come from it from that perspective. And so it's been a lot of rewriting the story, but really believing in what you're doing, like your mission, your passion. The path will reveal itself because you're naturally going to try things. And I feel like if we're not open to try new things, then you're not going to figure out what works for you. And for a long time, I didn't want to try new things. I thought, like, okay, it's just going to be YouTube and that's it. And I felt really bummed out when, like, maybe if I hit this subscriber count, all these things will happen for me. But it didn't. Now what do I do? What does that mean? And I think that could apply for like any platform you're on or whatever goal you're trying to reach. And so that's why pivoting is so important, and knowing that's not the end all be all. There's more to it than that. Like, what does YouTube really represent? So you could kind of think of it from that way, and it just kind of, re-energizes you. Because for a long time I felt stuck. I started off with YouTube, then obviously new things pop up like Instagram, and now we have TikTok and all these things, and now you feel constantly behind. And I don't want to feel that way anymore. And so lately, I think with becoming a mom, it really puts things in perspective of like what's important, what's not, what is my message that I'm trying to share. And again, like what you were saying, like how much time am I going to dedicate to this? Because it does take me away from my daughter at the same time. But I want to show her that I'm like, mom is loving work, like, and it's okay to try new things. And I've come to realize for myself, it's like I've tried things. Like I tried coaching for a little bit, like create my own online course. And that didn't really work out in the way I thought it would, but I really like teaching. So maybe I need to focus on that part and apply it to the next project. And I didn't realize that about myself because I thought you have to find the one thing and stick to it. Otherwise, you're just like lost forever. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not lost. I have to just, that's just the way I learn. I need to try different things, and I figure it out as I go. And once I allowed myself to do that, the guilt kind of went away.
Yeah. I love that. I think there's so much to like be said for just trying new things and like seeing where your path takes you. And right, while you may not know how to incorporate teaching or coaching in some capacity right now, you enjoy it, right? There's a love of interacting in that capacity that perhaps down the road an opportunity will show itself to you to incorporate that. So there's a lot of, like you said, trusting of the process that plays a role in all of that. What advice would you have for someone who's in the thick of it right now and they even feel a little bit lost on how to come back to their why or to come back to their voice and find that voice? Like, what advice do you have for somebody who's just in the thick of that right now?
I think as a mom or just in general, I think coming back to your own energy would be so helpful. And recently I did that for myself because for me, I'm an empath. I like take up everyone's energy all over me. And I had a hard time distinguishing like, well, what do I want to do? Or is this what other people are telling me? Like I couldn't figure out the difference for a long time. And especially now being a mom, like our energies are, so spread. You're doing so many things. So if you're in the thick of it and you're trying to figure out, I think even just setting aside some time for yourself, whether it's to journal, sit in a quiet room if you can, it doesn't have to be super long, but having that intention to come back to yourself. And then, I think you'll start creating this baseline where you're like, okay, I could actually hear myself think and feel. Then you'll know what your next step is. So that way it feels less chaotic. And I know it sounds really simple, but even during like my husband and I, we went on a mini vacation last weekend, and that was our second time away from our baby girl. And the first time we went, like I was so scared of leaving her. I enjoyed our vacation, but I found myself, not really present mentally because I was just thinking about all these things like, oh my gosh, am I behind? What's going on with life? And I couldn't really fully enjoy it. And this past year, I've been trying to find more inner peace and just really enjoying the moment, like truly, and not feeling that disconnect. And so when we went on our mini vacation last weekend, I found myself like, wow, I'm actually really enjoying this right now. Like, what do I want to do right now? And we were at the pool, and I was just sitting there, I'm like, I want to read a book right now, like a personal development book. And so, I whipped out my phone, I was reading it, I was just enjoying being in that moment. And that was such a huge moment for me because I didn't feel as anxious as I normally would. Like I really enjoyed our company together and that time together. And I realized that was a huge win. That was something that I need to see as, proof that I'm like, wow, all this inner work has been working. And just being present with ourselves and coming back to your own energy, doing what makes you happy, even if it's a little bit at a time. It doesn't have to be extravagant, like a vacation like that. That's why I'm trying to figure out, why did I feel the way I did that time? How can I incorporate that into my everyday life? That way I don't have to feel like I'm waiting for that buildup of like going on a vacation to finally feel relaxed. Like you could do little things every day for yourself.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's such a beautiful reminder of if we can prioritize ourselves and get past the inner fears or the inner anxieties or the limiting beliefs, and we can actually just get back to ourselves, that relaxation and calm and answers and the next step on our path can come to us just in the day. We don't have to wait for this like big monumentous occasion to crack open our world and make a different choice for us. So I love that. And I want to wrap it up a little bit, but I have one quick question for you. So you mentioned part of the, time that refills you up and recharges you is even just a little bit of time at a coffee shop. And for those that are local to San Diego, do you have any favorite coffee shops that you like to just go sit in? And maybe don't tell us your favorite one so it doesn't get too busy.
Oh.
But are there any ones that you like love that just like bring you a lot of joy in this area?
I love Communal Coffee. They have multiple locations now, depending where you are in San Diego, or North County, or, hang out around North Park. I love Public Square Coffee. So if you're ever in the La Mesa area, that's also a great spot. Oh my gosh, there's so many now, but I always find myself going back to those too.
Yep. I know there's so many and you just like never know.
Better Buzz is also really good too.
Better Buzz is good. Yeah. What do I really like? I like Panikin up North County, Panikin Coffee. It's like up in Encinitas, but they don't have Wi-Fi. So that's good for like days where I really just want to go and read a book because I don't want to do anything else.
Yeah. Aren't there the meditation gardens up there too?
Yes, they're beautiful. So for anyone that hasn't been up there, have you visited them, Nancy, at all?
Yes, it's so beautiful out there.
It's gorgeous. Yeah, it's right on the 101. It overlooks the ocean. I think it's like slightly elevated. Yeah, it's beautiful. I actually did a meditation there a couple weeks ago and it was very recharging. So if anyone listening hasn't been there and you're in the area, definitely check those self-realization gardens out as well. So Nancy, let's wrap it up. I would love to just toss it back over to you. Give our listeners a quick overview of where they can find you and how to engage with you in your work.
Yeah, feel free to connect with me over on Instagram at Happily Ever Nancy and at Hey Mama Memos. You can also follow me on YouTube. You guys like watching YouTube videos, and it's at Happily Ever Nancy as well. Thank you so much, Emily, for having me on. This has been so fun.
Oh, you're welcome. And I appreciate all your honesty and your vulnerability and all of these really beautiful nuggets of wisdom on how to come back to ourselves. So Nancy, thank you. And for those listening, we will link all of her connections and all of those links in our show notes so you will not miss her. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, please help us out and leave a review wherever you listen, and consider sharing with your friends. If you're interested in learning a bit more about the project or want to share your story, please visit our website linked in our show notes below.